obviously, Sabbath keeping will require some advanced preparation on your part, my part. Make sure that you have essential errands done before whatever day you choose as your Sabbath. If you're an A-type personality and the laundry's not done, you're not going to be able to relax on Sabbath, so do that another day before you have your Sabbath. Sabbath is no fun. This is one where I muck up quite often. It is no fun when Barb and I get home from the service here, and we try to take Sunday as our Sabbath, and there's no food in the house. So we're bagged, and we don't want to go out of the house, and so somebody's got to go to Food Basics or whatever and pick up stuff. That wrecks my Sabbath. If you don't like shopping, which I don't like shopping, that's not good. So do your essential errands ahead of this date. Do some planning and prep without getting legalistic. I love this illustration. Sabbath is like receiving the gift of a heavy snow day every week. Stores are closed. Roads are impassable. Suddenly you have the gift of a day to do whatever you want. You don't have any obligations, pressures, or responsibilities. You have permission to play, to be with friends, to take a nap, to read a good book, to watch a hockey game at 7:30 tonight. Unless they lose, it's going to wreck my Sabbath. But they're going to win. Okay. Few of us would give ourselves permission to have a no-pressure day. But God gives you and me permission one day in 7. And so again, River City Church, God is easier on us than we are on ourselves. God is more gracious on you than you are on yourself and to yourself. So there you have rope number 1, keeping Sabbath. Rope number 2 is very similar, and I can touch on this very briefly. It's something that Pat referred to earlier. Rope number 2 is something that through the ages has been called the daily office. The daily office. And in a nutshell, all this is it's kind of like a ground zero place for people who have a tough time keeping Sabbath to start. It's basically saying, 24 hours, can't do it. Not now, anyway. So they start with mini Sabbaths throughout the day. Mini Sabbaths. So it might be 4 2-minute breaks in the day, and I'll explain what those breaks would look like in a second. It might be 3 5-minute breaks in the day, or 2 10-minute breaks in the day, but you give yourself permission to take a break in your day to have Sabbath. You set aside specific times that work for you. You stop whatever it is you're doing. You center yourself in silence, and you reflect on God. It's not the same as Bible study. It's just getting quiet and reflecting on God. Like I said, the amount of time and when you do this and how you do it, that's up to you. But it is a spiritual discipline that women and men of faith have used to remain connected to God through the centuries. I don't think there was ever a time when Sabbath keeping was as difficult as it is today. We've lost so much where this spiritual discipline is concerned. If you haven't been training yourself aerobically, you can't see an ad for a marathon next week in Waterloo and say, I'm going to run a marathon next week. I mean, you can. Some of us might survive, but we're not going to enjoy it. And we're going to be hurting for a long time afterwards. It's the same with spiritual disciplines. Start small and build them up over time. So don't give up if your efforts to do the daily office or to observe Sabbath overwhelm you at times. They still overwhelm me, especially this one. Don't give up if you find that your mind wanders during this. Let's say you say, okay, Daryl said 2 minutes. That's the minimum. I'm going to do 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be 2 minutes. It's 30 seconds. But I'm going to do 2 minutes. And you're thinking, oh man, I got to do that today. And you pull out your Post-it notes and you're writing all these things down. It's a discipline. It takes time to clear your mind and to not get distracted. Give yourself grace. Because I think if there's one lesson we discovered this morning, God is not Pharaoh. God gives us grace. All of us, those who consider themselves His children, and those who even now are actively rebelling against Him. So you, River City, trust that God who began a good work in you that he will carry it on to completion at the return of Christ. I want to end with something a little different. I think we've got a couple minutes here. And I'm wondering, maybe just through listening this morning, if any of you have a question about Sabbath keeping, this first rope, or the daily office, the second rope. And if you do, just raise your hand and I'll try and see you. And I'll say it out. I'll repeat your question for everybody else so they can hear it, and I'll try to address it. Is that cool? It's a new thing. We do new things once in a while. Anybody? It's not half the risk of calling a son after 9 years, right? Anyone? I answered all your questions? Come on. I mean, I'm a good teacher, but I'm not that good. All right, well, let's do this another day then. I'll throw out a question opportunity for you. So when you're listening to the talks, maybe in the future, just like keep a pen handy and then write down your question. And at the end, you'll be ready, right? So, okay, I will give you one assignment before we wrap up, and that's this. While this is still fresh in your minds, I want you to think of these 2 ropes that I gave you this morning. Sabbath keeping, 24 hours off, once every 7 days. The daily office, mini Sabbaths in your day. And I want you to think about which of those 2 you want to start working on, and what one thing you will do in one of those 2 areas to make a change in your life. Okay? One thing. All right, we got 1 minute. I want you to share it with the person next to you. Go ahead.